All right, good evening, everyone. I hope I am audible.
Yes, you're audible.
All right, great.
Yes, we are live. Good to go.
Yes, Nishchal, you can begin.
Uh, Thank you, Pratiksha and Prashik. Hello all and good evening. I am Nishchal Singh, a student of economics from Lucknow and currently a fellow at Urban Governance Fellowship, Cohort 2, Lucknow, Uttar Pradesh. Also, I am one of the event coordinators for the 6th edition of Prajatantra this year. It is my pleasure to welcome you all to today's knowledge session on Sustainable Development Goals. We are honored to have with us a distinguished panel of experts who have dedicated their careers to advancing urban governance. Please allow me to introduce our esteemed panelists. First, we have Ms. Parul Agarwala, ma'am, the Country Program Manager, India at the UN Habitat. With over 15 years of experience, she has been instrumental in integrating sustainability, inclusion, and climate resilience into urban planning and financing. Ma'am has also served as a resilience and institutional capacity building consultant at the World Bank Group. A very warm welcome to you, ma'am. Next, we have joined by Ma'am Adishri Panda, an urban development practitioner, currently working as a project officer for urban development at the UN Habitat, India. She has also held the role of National Project Coordinator for the initiative Mainstreaming Leaving No One Behind in National Urban Policies and Programs in South Asia. A very warm welcome to you as well, ma'am. We eagerly anticipate the valuable insights you both will share from your experience with the UN Habitat. We are also excited to be joined shortly by our esteemed moderator, Ms. Pratiksha Deolekar, who is the program manager for capacity building at Praja. A very warm welcome to you, Pratiksha. With our moderator
Thank,
and panelists, with our moderator and panelists introduced, I now invite all the participants to join me in warmly welcoming them. I would like to hand over the session to Pratiksha to take it forward. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Nishchal, for the introduction. For those joining us for the first time, welcome to our knowledge session series organized as a part of Prajatantra, which is a national youth festival organized by Praja and co-hosted by NIUA and UN Habitat. So the main idea of Prajatantra and aim is to provide a platform for the youth of the country to design their own model city government and gain practical insights into local governance in India. Today's session will focus on localizing SDGs, citizen participation in urban planning and governance. We'll here explore the connection between SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, and public participation with a particular focus on SDG 11, which is on sustainable cities and communities. Our speakers today will delve into these concepts and emphasize the role of citizen engagement. I would also like to add that for participants, this is a great opportunity to learn how to integrate these ideas into your mayor's speech, policy presentations, and other competitions. And now I invite Parul to kick off the session.
Thank you so much for that warm welcome and the invitation. I have been associated with this youth festival for the last 2 years, and it's always been so fascinating to see how it evolves into something bigger and better each year. So I'm very happy, and that this year as well we have such a good representation from across India, and that you're all making the time. So as just I want to, before we delve into the presentation itself, want to speak a bit about UN Habitat. So our organization, United Nations Program for Human Settlements, is one of the many UN agencies that exist in the global ecosystem of international development. And our focus specifically is on urbanization and human settlements and regional development. We all now understand how important cities are in our journey towards development. People, communities like to live in cities, but then we also see a lot of challenges that are emerging. And so this year we are very delighted that the focus is on how to engage youth, how to mobilize local stakeholders in anchoring some of the challenges, very, very difficult challenges that we face globally today. So with that, I request Adishri to please share the presentation. Correct? Yes. So as the theme mentions here that citizen participation in planning and urban governance is central to localizing SDGs. If we go to the next slide, please. So what we would like to cover with you, with everyone who is able to join us online today is some fundamental concepts, like how is governance different from management? What is so special about SDG localization? Why is it important to us? So as we are going through this long lecture, I don't want to make it very one-sided either. But I thought it's important for us to collectively understand what are some of these key aspects and why your role as youth bodies, as young game changers, is so important and so crucial for all of us. So let me begin with what is urban governance. Urban governance is a process, that we emphasize on that it is a way through which many stakeholder segments, be it youth, elderly, women, NGOs, academia, governments, local governments, state governments, institutions, they all come together to participate in planning, implementing, managing the affairs of the city. Affairs of the city, as in what should be developed, where the investment should be made, what is our vision collectively for the city, where we want to be in 20 years, 30 years. And then, discuss collectively what should be that process to realize our short-term goals and our long-term agenda, for our city's development. So in that sense, governance is about how things are done. There is less focus on what the result is. Of course, that is documented in the vision plans and in a lot of blogs we see written all by different stakeholders. But essentially, it is about the process, and we will cover what are the specific aspects of that process. How should that process be? What does it mean? So, as we go across, so that is a fundamental concept that measuring governance implies that we need mechanisms that measure the processes and the institutions that allow for the process to function and to take shape. Next slide, please. There are 5 principles of governance. So, like I mentioned, like what does it mean? How do we measure governance? So let's start with there. And the first measure is effectiveness of the governance system. How effective is it in reaching out to everyone? Is the process, like streamlined enough? Is it equitable? Is the governance process reaching out to everyone in our societies, in our communities, in our cities? Is there someone who is accountable? So since if we are planning, designing, putting a vision in process, putting together a project pipeline, a funding pipeline, where does the buck stop? Who is that person? Who are those people who are accountable to make sure that our governance systems are functioning properly? The other aspect is about security. It implies that, is there a lot of focus, is the governance focus giving equal focus on the security of people, of the health, of the environment? And we all know we are living through, the climate crisis right now. So we understand how important it is to make sure our processes are equally responding to these very, very real challenges now. And then lastly, digitalization and knowledge management. We are living in times where, we are, we are commonly using the word now, the fourth industrial revolution. We are really looking at how would the artificial intelligence impact us, how would big data impact us. So in that sense, it's important. Another, key area of governance is that are we making the best use of those digitalization and knowledge management aspects of governance, as well. Go to the next slide, please. Now let me spend some minutes about about Agenda 2030 and the Sustainable Development Goals. I'm just now reflecting back and thinking perhaps you could have had a little poll or something. But I'm hoping that a lot of you already know about Agenda 2030, about the Sustainable Development Goals, about the Paris Agreement. These are all important global commitments that the countries have made to make our world a better place. So Agenda 2030, it was a follow-up to the Millennium Development Goals. And in 2015, all the member countries across the world adopted this. And they said, we will collectively over the next 15 years, from 2015 to 2030, try to achieve certain goals, focus on certain goals, and try to achieve certain targets. So there are 5 pillars that anchor the goals. These 5 pillars are, the first is on people. How do we end poverty and hunger in all its form? The second pillar is on prosperity, that we need to promote shared prosperity amongst everyone, amongst all segments of society. We need to foster peace and just and inclusive societies where there is no gender bias, there is no ageism, there is safety, security for all of us, and peaceful coexistence. We're living in a world where you must have been, where you're looking at the news coming across. There is so much conflict all over the world. So how do we create that grassroots movement of more peaceful societies and social cohesion? The fourth pillar is on partnerships, that no one person, no one segment, not one organization can achieve all this. We need to work in partnerships and we need to collectively achieve these goals. And the last one and the most important P in this 5 Ps is planet. We have been extracting the humanity has been extracting and over extracting from our planet, and we have almost crossed that inflection point of no return, where we need to take actions very quickly before things become even worse. So those are the 5 Ps, 5 pillars that anchor the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And you can see how they are, how while each of the goal has, connections to each of these 5 pillars, some have more focus on one particular aspects. So take, for example, the prosperity pillar. We think the intent or the underlying emphasis understanding is that for prosperous societies, cities, and countries, we will need to make sure that everyone has access to clean energy. There is an SDG 7 which is on affordable and clean energy, that the energy needs to be affordable. Another, the SDG 8, which is on decent work and economic growth, is the other SDG that has close links to the prosperity, that unless everyone has opportunities for work in a formal economy, not an informal economy, where they have decent working conditions, where this economic growth is shared amongst everyone, amongst cities, amongst our villages. We to create prosperity, those are some fundamental aspects that we need to look at. Some other examples, reducing inequalities, which is SDG 10, directly relates to the pillar of prosperity. And we will place a lot of emphasis today on SDG 11, which is on sustainable cities and communities. And this SDG 11 itself has 10 specific targets. Which are linked to the various domains of the urban sector, from housing to mobility to open spaces, to health outcomes, to culture, archaeology, history, and many, many such important aspects that we see that are important for cities. So you can see, how the Agenda 2030 for sustainability, for sustainable development, looks at the 5 pillars. There are 17 goals, and then each goal has certain targets. And for each of these targets, there are indicators because for us, we also, the best practices that you have set yourself target, how do we measure whether we are moving in the right direction or not? So it's a pretty comprehensive framework. In that sense, I hope most of you already know about this. But if not, I would encourage you to please sign up and look for the Agenda 2030 online. There is a lot of learning material. There are a lot of interesting YouTube videos that you can watch and to make yourself familiarize yourself with the Agenda 2030. Next slide, please. Yes, so this is an interesting concept of the wedding cake. So there is another relationship that you can see here, and I think it's important here because the whole point of this lecture is also to focus on civic engagement and the participation. So at the bottom of this, the absolute foundation, like I mentioned, is the planet, the ecosystem that we are living in, the biosphere that we need to maintain and that we need to restore now. The second tier is the society, that we need a healthy, safe, resilient society where nobody's hungry. Everybody has access to safe water, safe sanitation, affordable energy, uh, health, education. So absolute, another fundamental aspects for equitable societies. The next layer is economy, that we need to give livelihood opportunities to everyone to sustain themselves. And then on top of it is that this approach can only work if there is a strong partnership across all levels. So essentially, this is a short summary of what this means. Next slide, please. Now I would, I'm going to go a bit more, do a deep dive into the urban sector specific concepts. So when we talk about the urban areas, cities and the metropolitan areas, what does governance mean in that context? What are we trying to achieve? So what we are trying to achieve is leaving no one behind, or if we want to put it, putting the last one first, that we design cities, we think of cities, we think of investments with the idea that the person who is the farthest behind from us, who is left farthest behind, is actually our top priority. Second aspect of this is also leaving no place behind. We also understand through a lot of work that we have done, interactions we have had, and from the empirical, knowledge, that where people are born matters, because that determines what type of access they have to health, to education, to livelihood opportunities, to recreation. So in addition to leaving no one behind, we have a second complementary sort of goal, which is to leave no place behind as well. Within the urban sector, some principles that we have already covered earlier, which I would like to emphasize here specifically, that are more, relevant for the urban scale, is this aspect of participation and inclusivity. That urban areas are also where people from many different backgrounds, people converge, and so it's important that no matter what their affiliations are, if it is a refugee, if it is a resident of the city, if it is a migrant from another city, everyone has the opportunity to participate, and they're all considered part of their cities. So that's an important principle here. The second area that I would like to emphasize here for you is this idea of subsidiarity and proportionality. So here, I'm sure a lot of you are also aware of and must have heard of this from other lectures as well, that in India we have a decentralized framework of governance. And what that means is that the subsidiarity means that the local governments, the subnational governments should have more power, which are proportional to the functions that they are responsible for. So, so both the function and the power, power should complement each other. We cannot overburden the local governments with a lot of functions, but without devolving the right type of fiscal, jurisdictional power to them to actually deliver on those functions. So that's an important one, that should be proportional. And that is, something that is the weakest in our current setup. Cooperation and efficiency on how to have different government bodies, be it a municipal corporation, how well does it, interact with your, utility companies, with your power companies, with your parastatal organizations that are responsible for transportation, your PWD department. So there are so many different entities, local governments that are operating at the cities. How well are they cooperating and working together? These are some important aspects that are very unique to the urban sector that I wanted to emphasize when we think of the urban governance itself. And the new urban agenda, again, if we have the time, this is the blueprint that UN Habitat has recommended, with specific, with five pillars that are, that are absolutely mandatory for any country, for any city to emphasize, to strengthen within their governance system to be able to deliver on their promise. So if you can go to the next slide. All right. So participation in global frameworks. So I hope everyone is comfortable with English. If you're not, please let me know. I can, try to speak in a more youth-friendly language of English. I can.
Yes, Parul, there are some students, would prefer to have some interaction in Hindi. So just in
Okay,
between, if you could use Hindi, that would be great.
sure. So let me try to do that. So I was talking about the sustainable development, goal 11. तो इसमें मैं ज़्यादा ध्यान दूंगी because this is the goal out of the 17 goals, which focuses on cities. So in summary, what is the goal? It is to make cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. Inclusive के बारे में मैंने बात किया था, that everyone in the city should have a right to be able to participate and to speak. Cities have to be safe for everyone. We are seeing so many challenges, so many incidents, that make the cities unsafe for women, for children, for elderly, for the LGBTQ groups in our cities, for disabled persons. So this is, mandate that cities should be for everyone. They should be resilient. आजकल हम देख रहे हैं रोज न्यूज में आ रहा है कि चेन्नई में फ्लड्स हो गए, मुंबई में फ्लड्स हो गए, गुड़गांव में फ्लड्स हैं. So we understand कि climate crisis में हम, we are living in the climate change and climate crisis. And so how do we make our cities? No, I can. So how can we make the cities resilient? Resilient मतलब कि जो अभी हम things that we are experiencing now, कि ज्यादा बारिश हो रही है, फ्लड्स हो गया, तो हम इससे अपने शहरों को कैसे ठीक करें, और आगे के जो प्रोजेक्शंस हैं वो भी सोचते हुए हम अभी ही कैसे इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर बनाए, कैसे फैसिलिटीज बनाए, दैट जो फ्यूचर की प्रॉब्लम्स हैं, challenges हैं, they keep our cities safe from that as well. So you can imagine that we cannot predict earthquakes, but we design our cities, roads, infrastructure assets कि वो earthquakes से safe रहे. So there are so many different types of hazards, natural hazards, for which we have to be resilient. and sustainable. The main emphasis here is sustainability कि that we are जैसे जैसे शहर बड़े हो रहे हैं, there is a bit of a friction between cities and forests. सब या तो ये agricultural land में बढ़ रहे हैं या forest land में बढ़ रहे हैं. So that is not a sustainable model of growth. How do we shift gears? How do we make sure that we are not unnecessarily wasting, taking away from nature instead of giving back to the nature. So those are important things. So Sustainable Development Goal SDG 11 made 10 targets हैं, and we are specially emphasizing target 11.3 because like I mentioned that governance is a process. So शहरों को बनाने में भी we have to equally emphasize the process, and target 11.3 is how do we enhance inclusive, sustainable urbanization and capacities for participatory, integrated, sustainable planning and management. So ये target है that हम सिर्फ process ही नहीं करें, लेकिन उस process को बेहतर करने के लिए what do we need to do? We need to build capacities, we need to do training, we need to have dialogues. And so for us, engaging with Praja Foundation, this Praja Tantra is one such aspect of informing more people what good participatory planning is. And similarly, how do we track this? There is an indicator that how many cities have a direct participation structure of civil society in planning and management. So maybe some of you have already come across this, but हर शहरों के master plans बनते हैं, which is an exercise that is done once in 15 years or 20 years, which is a way to collect ideas from everyone who's living in the cities that what is your vision for next 20 years, 25 years. और वो master plan एक participatory exercise होना चाहिए. Something maybe some of you who are living in smart cities may have experienced कि जब ये smart city के proposals बन रहे थे, then the cities did some participatory exercise. They have this public perception survey. So those are all methods to engage communities for for engaging with their government officials, with commissioners, with mayors, and to tell them what is important for them as residents of the city. So again, we focus a lot on participation and the process of governance in that sense. Next slide, please. Yes, so again, a little more emphasis कि ये motivation क्या है for implementing SDG target 11.3. It is to make sure that जो local residents हैं, उनकी क्या insights हैं, उनकी क्या knowledge है. And we think that this is very, very important for us because we have seen कि जब हम community से interaction करते हैं, so we get to know कि उनके क्या challenges हैं. Because I'm not living in your city, I don't know, what is the challenge that is unique to your city, or as a resident of the city, what are your priorities? Similarly, we have found a lot of times people know the solution also. तो हम लोग ये सारे इतनी indigenous knowledge की बात करते हैं. There is a lot of knowledge in the cities कि अगर फ्लडिंग हो रही है या हमें कोई ऐसा इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर बनाना है जो सीमेंट कम यूज करे, कंक्रीट कम का इस्तेमाल कम हो, और उस शहर में और उस रीजन में किस तरीके की प्लांटिंग जरूरी है जो जिससे पानी का कंट्रोल होता है. स्पेशली कम्युनिटीज दैट आर लिविंग ऑन द हिल रीजन, उनको पता होता है कि कौन से पेड़ लगाने से सॉइल इरोजन कम होगा, ये लैंडस्लाइड्स कम होंगी. So using all those insights, collecting those insights from people is very important. Second, ये जो continuous engagement होती है from from the different stakeholders, it also builds trust between the people, between the residents and the city leaders better, so that they are more responsive to each other and to to also the from the perspective of accountability to who is responsible to get things done. We are seeing these days कि आजकल सोशल मीडिया की वजह से, and I am a little older तो मैं बोल सकती हूँ, that there is very little connection amongst people who are living next to you, your next door neighbor. So these engagements are very important to build social trust and cohesion. कि आपकी community में कौन कौन है, to build those trust, to be there, to help them. So I think those types of interactions are very very important to for like a peaceful coexistence. The other aspect is that bringing in civil society, bringing in citizens, also helps in localizing the SDGs to make sure that there is accountability. जो city leaders हैं, mayors हैं, municipal commissioners हैं, officials हैं, चाहे जल board के हों या electricity department के हों, they know कि उनकी क्या accountability है, what is that they have committed to the residents. And to be able to articulate कि कोई problem है, what is their solution, what is their vision for it. So that's another aspect of importance of participation and governance. And then the last part is that making sure that consultations are happening at all levels and that they include everyone. We make a joke a lot of times that planners and architects and city officials, they plan and design cities for a male person who is healthy, with no disability, and in his middle, and an adult. So because we see that the city's infrastructure is not friendly to children, it is not friendly to older people, to disabled person. So to actually enjoy the city facilities, you have to be very healthy, and you have to be an adult, and you have to be a male. And I say the male part because we see how unsafe cities, are becoming, or for women still. We need to change that, and that change can only happen when you hear from different people, when we give that platform to different groups of people to come and share the challenges that they are facing, so that your officials, your architects, your planners, mayors, commissioners have to think of a solution. They cannot avoid it. Things are there in front of them and coming from the citizens that these are the challenges that they need to address. So many, many reasons for engaging people, for making sure that the citizen engagement is continuous. It's not a one-time exercise, and that we include everyone in the decision making. Next slide, please. So this is a measure of how we are doing in India. So I've spoken a lot about engagement and indicators and targets. So UN system, UN agencies work closely with Niti Aayog to track the 17 SDGs and the 169 targets and the various indicators, and they're consolidated and they're presented at a UN SDG India dashboard. These are some, figures here. But of course, we are not able to collect every indicator because there is a challenge of collecting data at the ground level. So while under the SDG 11, some indicators have been mapped and data for those has been collected, which give us information on how we are doing across our country. So which indicators are performing well, which are the areas where we are lagging behind, specific states, specific geographies where we need to put in more more thought and funds. At present, target 11.3, which is on this inclusive participation, has not been included in the index because of lack of availability of data. But if you are interested in looking at what are the other SDGs, if you're interested in learning more about, say, SDG 2, which is on food security or water or gender, you can go to this index and you can see what are the types of data that are being collected and how well your state is doing in that indicator. Next slide, please. Yeah. So, so we realize that there is a data gap, but we are also now looking at how to how to fill this gap. So we have initiated this process of civic engagement through UN Habitat's offices worldwide. And we are also spreading this information by word of mouth, reaching out to a lot of cities to give us this information. So sort of like crowdsourcing the information on the SDGs. And this is the scorecard for evaluation. It's a questionnaire. So I would urge you to go online, look for it, and fill it in. It will help us in getting the. If you can go back to the slide, Avishri. So yeah, so we asked questions like, are the structures of civil society participation in your city? I mean, has any government entity approached you formally कि आप ये survey भरें? Are there structures for society participation and budget decision making? So हर शहर को अपना budget बनाना होता है. So are the cities reaching out to you to say, okay, where do you want the funding to be? So similarly, there are these set of 4 questions which will help us in compiling this information and then, filling that data gap that is there. So please, go online and fill this out for your cities. Next slide, please. Yeah, and this is the QR code. So specifically, the indicator measures participation in urban planning process, which is key for building sustainable cities and communities. This data tool, we can translate it into several languages, and please, there's a QR code available if you would like to do it now or do it later. Yeah, please fill it in. Let's go to the next slide. Yeah, so this is a result from our current crowdsourced information. From India, we do see that overall participation is fairly low, compared to other cities and regions and countries. So we need to do our bit. Please spread the word, and so that in the next iteration of this data, of this map, we can have a lot more data, a lot more coverage for India as well. Next slide. Yeah. So again, going back to the Sustainable Development Goal 11, I think the cities, are the primary drivers for localizing the SDG, 2030. Since the whole, we see people are converging and living in cities, as countries become more and more urbanized. So all the more important that we look at how we are doing the development in our cities. Linking this goal to urban and territorial dimensions is also very important to localization. And and perhaps I can, also speak a bit about what does localization mean. So जो हमने ये SDGs की बात करी है, 17 goals, targets, indicators की बात करी है, we realize that each country has a different context. So there are some countries which are small islands. There are some countries that are so large, like India and China. So not everyone can have the same interpretation of a target, same interpretation of an indicator. Some may be applicable, some may not be applicable. So we work with the national governments, and in the case of India, it is the Niti Aayog, to see what does a specific target or indicator mean for the context of our country. How much emphasis needs to be placed on a set of targets or a different set of targets, so that it is meaningful for our country's development trajectory. And that is sort of like localizing this global framework. Next slide, please. And this is a video, so I can take a little break, but on what SDG 11 is, so we can play that. Audio is not
Yes.
Is it not audible? Let me reshare.
The world is becoming increasingly urban. The world is becoming increasingly urban. We'll need to build a new city for 1 million people every week to keep up, or manage the growth of the cities we already have. The battle for sustainable development will be won or lost in our cities, working with the rural areas on which they depend for food and natural resources. Mayors and local governments are already taking action to win this battle. We provide basic services and work with slum dwellers and neighbourhoods to upgrade their living conditions. We improve air quality by investing in public transport and green mobility. We protect the environment through sustainable waste management. We tackle urban segregation by ensuring quality green and public spaces for all. We protect urban cultural heritage for future generations. We monitor and regulate land use to make cities more resilient to climate change and disasters. We involve our communities in planning for inclusive and sustainable urbanisation. Local and regional governments seek strong partnerships with national governments to ensure enabling legal frameworks and adequate resources, and play our full role in achieving Sustainable Development Goal 11, which is Sustainable Cities and Communities. The Sustainable Development Agenda depends on local governments.
So I hope that was a little useful. Like I was, sharing that cities are so important for us because we see it's not just about basic, aspects of food and housing, but also how we need to make collective change across all these dimensions. If we just build a house, an affordable house, but we place it in the context where there is no road or there is no water supply, there is no access to open space, then it is then it just and ends up as being completely not a very useful investment. So in that sense, this convergence, this holistic approach to cities is very important. And like I was mentioning, the localizing process, what does it mean? For work with Niti Aayog, with the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, um, to see how we can measure the indicators that are relevant for India and in which the local and regional governments can deliver, and they have the aspiration and the ambition to deliver as well. Next slide, please. Um, so how do we do this? Localizing the SDGs, it sounds good, but really, how do we make a thought that we think is important into very practical steps? So we do this by various methods. The first is technical cooperation, where we work with cities, we work with the state level, state urban departments, state climate cells, to see what are the gaps in their current technical, in terms of their technical understanding, technical capacities, in management and operational capacities that we can come in and we can support. The other is strategic partnerships. I can mention that it's not possible for any one organization to deliver everything. So how do you forge those partnerships? We do a lot of interactions between cities from across the world so that they can exchange knowledge, We do research and knowledge development. So while we are looking at, say, for example, making a project that would give water, safe water to all, but what does it mean in the times of climate crisis? Do we need to give a different type of engineering thinking, different type of solution because we don't know what the climate crisis of the future will look like? Um, we do a lot of advocacy and visibility, like reaching out to different institutions, different partners, youth groups, academic institutions to bring new knowledge on one hand. And then we also take India's examples and India's concerns on global platform as well. So these are very, many different methods and means for us to do these collaborations and partnerships and cooperations. And please go on our website so that you can understand more about each of these different aspects. Next slide, please. So summarizing, so quick summary of things that I've covered so far. Citizen participation and engagement for localizing SDGs. So, another important thing is कि participation or engagement में भी बहुत फर्क होता है. And I will show you in a few, just a few slides down the line. What do we mean? Engagement is a process where we are telling communities, please come together and let us discuss and you co-think, design and implement the projects. It means that we work with municipal authorities to help in tailoring the policies for local communities because, just the mayor or the commissioner or officials as individuals and very, like well-studied, well-experienced officials also cannot understand the full length and breadth of what is needed. It's important to go to the communities and ask what are your priorities. It's important also to identify what are the most important urban challenges and to better design solutions. Because we understand, there are practical aspects of city governance and administration and development as well. While we would want to do everything, सब चीजें possible नहीं है, we have to prioritize. So understanding what those priorities are is possible only if you talk to the communities and see what are your most key challenges. It helps in creating a sense of agency, sense of ownership amongst the people that this is our city. ये किसी एक जने का शहर नहीं है, ये सबका शहर है. And so we all have an equal stake in it. We have equal ownership in it, and we will all benefit equally when something goes well. Other aspects of importance of participation and engagement is that it creates accountability. And this is very important because, if you ask me, like who is accountable in my organization if something is not working, we should know, So we have a very solid sort of like rule that somebody should be responsible for delivering, somebody should be responsible for each of the different actions, activities. So who is in the city? If you don't get water supply in your house one day, who would be that person who is accountable for making sure you get water supply? Who is accountable for collecting the waste? Who is accountable for making sure that if there is a pothole on the road in front, कि वो कौन उसको ठीक करेगा सड़क को? So all these are important because it creates good outcomes. It reduces corruption. It increases access to everyone. So a lot of different reasons why we need to encourage participation and engagement of communities in the governance of cities. Next slide, please. Yeah, so like I mentioned, what are the dimensions of citizen participation? And it's a bit more technical, but I still wanted to cover some aspects of it. If you can see on this diagram, कि एक तो पार्टिसिपेशन बहुत ही बेसिक सी होती है कि कोई आया, उसने आपको कोई इंफॉर्मेशन दे दी और खत्म, so or you just give the information that you think is important. तो उसको हम बोलते हैं एजुकेशन कि आपने बस एक लेक्चर दे दिया बट आपने अपॉर्चुनिटी नहीं दी कि उसका क्या फीडबैक हो रहा है, वो लेक्चर रेलेवेंट है या नहीं है. So there are different stages of this consultations where you bring people on board, where you ask everyone a question, you give them opportunity to come and give some sort of a feedback, and you collect those ideas, you rework your design idea, and then you go back. The second is placation, कि आपने ideas collect कर लिए. A lot of times, to give an example of this would be, and I think in India also, there are a lot of times, due to environmental impact, reports कि या जैसे कि किसी स्लम का ही रिहैबिलिटेशन हो रहा है, तो you come, governments come और डेवलपमेंट पार्टनर्स come and they say okay, हम आपके स्लम को पूरा रीडेवलप करेंगे, यहाँ पे थोड़ा सा डिमोलिशन होगा कंसल्टेशंस के बाद. then you do the application that for the meantime जब ये सब चीजें हो रही हैं, we will try to rehouse you in a different place. So you try to do that okay, for a time के लिए do this. But the real citizen power comes at the stage number 6, partnership. That you make the people, say for instance, continuing this example of slum rehabilitation, you make people the partners. कि आप में से कितने जने हैं जो जिनको दूसरी जगह थोड़े टाइम के लिए रहना है. What are the challenges you will face? Because a lot of times in informal settlements, their livelihoods are also in the same place. तो आप लोगों के साथ बैठ के प्रोजेक्ट डिजाइन करें, सॉल्यूशन सोचें. Delegated power is where you also let the communities in as the decision maker. ये काफी सारा काम ये उड़ीसा में हो रहा है, under the जागा मिशन, where to get a project approval, जो वहाँ की self help groups हैं, even they need to sign and say that okay, we have reviewed the proposal, we agree with it, and as community we endorse it. So that is giving a little more power to the communities. And then the last is citizen control, where they also then help in co-implementing. So this is just a very very short summary. इसका किसी को interest है governance या citizen participation में, so please go in. There's a lot of literature with good examples on what this is, and it can be an interesting subject for further study as well. Next slide, please. So here I hand over to my colleague Adishri, who is implementing a very, very interesting project with you in Odisha, and जिसमें हम ये जितना भी ये जो लैडर के बारे में बात किया है, गवर्नेंस के बारे में बात किया है, एंगेजमेंट के बारे में बात किया है, वी आर ऑल्सो होल्डिंग आवर सेल्स अकाउंटेबल कि हम ये बता तो रहे हैं, बट देन हाउ आर वी एक्चुअली implementing it ourselves. So this will give you an idea. I think someone had asked आप example भी बताएं, so this is the example. And I hand over to Adishri to take this up now.
Adishri, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, okay. Is my screen still visible?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Yeah. So, thank you so much, Parul. तो जो यंग गेम चेंजर्स इनिशिएटिव जो पारुल बात कर रही थी, जो हमारा एक प्रोजेक्ट है, उसमें हमारे 3 इम्प्लीमेंटिंग मेन पार्टनर्स हैं यूएन हैबिटेट के साथ जुड़े हुए. एक तो है स्टेट गवर्नमेंट के लेवल पे हम काम करते हैं हाउसिंग एंड अर्बन डेवलपमेंट डिपार्टमेंट के साथ, जो उड़ीसा स्टेट गवर्नमेंट के अंदर आता है. फिर हम लोकल लेवल पे जाते हैं, लोकल म्युनिसिपैलिटी जटनी म्युनिसिपैलिटी है जिनके साथ हम जुड़े हुए हैं. और फाइनली थर्ड हमारे बहुत ही इंपॉर्टेंट इम्प्लीमेंटिंग पार्टनर है यूथ पार्टिसिपेंट्स. तो जटनी म्युनिसिपैलिटी में हमारे हम इनको बोलते हैं यंग गेम चेंजर्स who we work with and who are associated with the local municipality, and where we implement this through different stages of
Sorry,
the project.
Adishri, it's a request. If you can just turn on your camera. Actually, we're not able to put you on spotlight.
Okay. Yes. I think my camera is on now.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. I was just focusing on the presentation, but no issues. Yeah. तो इसमें जो डिफरेंट स्टेप्स हैं हमारे वेयर वी आर फर्स्ट आइडेंटिफाइंग कि हमारे जो सिटीजन्स हैं या ग्रुप्स हैं जिनके साथ हम काम कर रहे हैं वो हमारे एक्सपर्ट्स हैं एक्चुअली हमारे ग्रुप के लिए और हमारे इनिशिएटिव के लिए उसके साथ देन वी आर ट्राइंग टू अलाइन विद द गवर्नमेंट प्रायोरिटीज जो एग्जिस्टिंग स्कीम्स है उसमें कैसे हम इंटरलिंकेजेस ढूंढ सकते हैं और उसके हिसाब से हम अपने प्रोजेक्ट प्लानिंग कर सकते हैं ताकि एक जो भी हम इंटरवेंशंस करें वो कंटिन्यूएशन में रहे विद द एग्जिस्टिंग अर्बन डेवलपमेंट प्रायोरिटीज ऑफ द म्युनिसिपैलिटी एंड लाइक पारुल वेरी इंपॉर्टेंटली मेंशन कि अकाउंटेबिलिटी कैसे रहेगा रिस्पॉन्सिबल अथॉरिटीज कौन है किसका क्या रोल रहेगा इस प्रोजेक्ट में किसका क्या रोल रहेगा इम्प्लीमेंटेशन स्टेज में और फिर मॉनिटरिंग स्टेज में so we have conducted a lot of stakeholder consultations in which we try to first understand कि requirement क्या है, हमारी needs assessment क्या है, पब्लिक स्पेसेस को अगर हम इंक्लूसिव बनाना चाहते हैं उसमें क्या स्टेप्स हम फॉलो कर सकते हैं और ऐसे स्टेप्स जहाँ पे लोकल कम्युनिटीज खुद इन्वॉल्व हो सके और फ्यूचर में उस इंटरवेंशंस में पार्टिसिपेट कर सके and like it's mentioned like sharing responsibilities की म्युनिसिपैलिटी सिर्फ आके इंटरवीन करके चले ना जाए बट एक्चुअली इम्प्लीमेंट जो इम्प्लीमेंटेड एक्शंस हैं उसको कैसे मेंटेन किया जाए ये हम कम्युनिटीज के साथ भी डिस्कस कर रहे हैं ताकि we can have supported public spaces, we can have co-designed public spaces where we are working together to create the designs, implement the designs, budget those designs, and then also monitor those actions that we take. So these are the different 5 to 6 steps that we've been following, where we try to incorporate participation and consultations at every stage of the project implementation cycle. And it's very important to basically work with different stakeholders in this, in which we try to make an inclusion where we create a plan or we create a design where we have different communities who are part of this process. We have जो हमारे NGOs हैं जो local organizations हैं जो वहाँ काम कर रहे हो we have the elderly senior citizens उनसे भी थोड़ी interventions की discuss किया जाए ताकि उनके लिए भी accessible रहे फिर we have religious groups, we have volunteer groups, women, children and youth. तो सबका बेसिकली ओपिनियन लेके ही हमें ऐसे इंटरवेंशंस बनाने चाहिए ताकि हम सबका एक ओपिनियन ले सके और उसी को इंटीग्रेट करते हुए नीड्स असेसमेंट कर सके तो इसमें आता है कि हर स्टेक होल्डर का क्या रोल रहता है यूजुअली अगर हम एक प्रोजेक्ट को लें सो दिस इज कॉल्ड द पब्लिक पार्टिसिपेशन स्पेक्ट्रम in which we have stakeholders whom we just inform like Parul highlighted कि हमारा ladder of participation में कुछ stakeholders होते हैं जिसको सिर्फ information दी जाती है but उनका कोई feedback incorporate फिर बाद में नहीं होता है फिर next level पे हम आते हैं consultation पे जहाँ पे actual feedback लिया जाता है and उसको फिर integrate किया जाता है in any policy or planning process. And third stage pe, then we have involvement, where we have active engagement, where we have active participation of the stakeholders, ताकि हम जो aspirations है वो समझ सके और उसके हिसाब से काम कर सकें. And then the next stage of the spectrum is to collaborate. So in collaboration, it's very important to work with the different groups in different platforms and at different levels, either at the government levels or at the local community levels. And the final stage is empower, where we actually empower or give the agency to the stakeholder to make that change. And this is the stage where we are actually imagining our youth groups, where we give the training and the capacity building for the youth to actually engage and make the change that they wish to see. So this falls under the youth engagement spectrum, in which we can see that there are different layers of actually even involving young participants and the youth in urban development processes. सो कुछ प्रोग्राम है जहाँ पे सिर्फ सर्विसेज के बारे में बताया जाता है। मान लो आपकी स्कीम्स हैं, आपके इंसेंटिव्स हैं, जो सिर्फ इंफॉर्मेशन के हिसाब से बताई जाती हैं। और नेक्स्ट आता है स्टेज पे जो डेवलपमेंट है, वेयर वी आर इमेजिनिंग व्हाट वुड बी यूजफुल फॉर द यंग पार्टिसिपेंट्स, व्हाट वुड बी यूजफुल फॉर यूथ to actually develop their capacities. At the next stage, we have youth leadership, where we create the future leaders by giving them the skills, and we're building the capacities of problem solving, digital skills, and also creating an awareness of what is happening in your area, in your community, and using that knowledge to actually build the programs. देन द नेक्स्ट स्टेज है सिविक एंगेजमेंट। तो यहाँ पे एक्चुअली यूथ लीडरशिप की जो आपने स्किल्स लर्न की होगी, इसको आप कैसे स्किल बिल्डिंग लेके आप एक्चुअली अपने लोकल लीडर्स के पास जाके इस चीज के साथ आप निगोशिएट कर सकते हैं। वेयर यू हैव awareness campaigns, where you have advocacy campaigns, where you hold the local leadership accountable on what should be achieved in the community. एंड देन फाइनली यूथ पार्टिसिपेंट्स जब ये लीडरशिप स्किल्स और एंगेजमेंट स्किल्स एक्चुअली खुद से डेवलप कर सकते हैं, then they actually go into the community and involve more members to be part of the public participation process. तो ये हमारा मोबिलाइजेशन स्टेज है कि आपने खुद जो स्किल्स लर्न किए हैं उसको आप नेक्स्ट पर्सन, नेक्स्ट एडल्ट, नेक्स्ट एल्डरली पर्सन को आप कैसे उनको भी फिर इंगेज करके ऐसे ही आप ग्रुप्स में स्टेक होल्डर एंगेजमेंट कैसे डेवलप कर सकते हैं। तो कुछ एग्जांपल्स अगर मैं दूं कि सिटीजन एंगेजमेंट का डिफरेंट डिफरेंट प्रोसेसेस इंडियन सिटीज में कैसे रहा है। यूजुअली हमारी इनफॉर्मल एंगेजमेंट रही है, वे यूजुअली जस्ट हैव फीडबैक प्रोसेसेस। तो उसको कन्वर्ट किया, उसको एक फॉर्मल वे में अगर कन्वर्ट किया जाए, उसमें कुछ कुछ है हमारे पास स्टेट लेजिस्लेशन जो कि 74th कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन अमेंडमेंट एक्ट में हाईलाइट किया गया है, where we like to constitute ward committees. So local municipality level में एक और लेयर आता है wards का, जिसके अंदर सारे population of the cities is then divided into these wards. So the Constitutional Amendment Act says that हर ward को एक ward का एक ward committee होना चाहिए, which will represent the needs of that group, of that population group and that ward. However, हमारे अनफॉर्चुनेटली इंडियन सिटीज में बहुत सारे वार्ड्स में ये कमिटी सेटअप नहीं हो पाया ड्यू टू इधर लिमिटेड रिसोर्सेज, या फिर लोकल म्युनिसिपैलिटी ही सारी उनकी फंक्शनिंग हैंडल करती है। सो लाइन ऑफ कंट्रोल इज स्टिल विद द म्युनिसिपैलिटी। तो वार्ड्स का ज्यादा ऑटोनॉमी या फिर पावर नहीं बिल्ड हो पाया है अब तक। एंड सेकेंड एक और फैसिलिटी है विच इज द कम्युनिटी पार्टिसिपेशन लॉ, जहाँ पे कम्युनिटी पार्टिसिपेशन इज एक्चुअली मैंडेटेड, वेयर और एक लोअर लेवल पे, मतलब वार्ड कमेटी के और एक लेवल पे आप एरिया सभा बना सकते हैं, जहाँ पे पार्टिसिपेशन ऑफ पब्लिक और टेकिंग फीडबैक ऑफ पब्लिक इज मैंडेटरी। तो ये कम्युनिटी पार्टिसिपेशन लॉ भी बहुत ही कम स्टेट्स में इम्प्लीमेंट हुआ है अब तक, एंड आगे हमारा पुश रहना चाहिए कि बहुत और सारी स्टेट्स इसको इम्प्लीमेंट करें। एक और एग्जाम्पल ऑफ पार्टिसिपेशन हमारा रहा है इज दैट पहले जो पैसिव फीडबैक होती थी, अब हम थोड़े से एक्टिव कंसल्टेशंस और एंगेजमेंट में भी हम बेसिकली वी आर गेटिंग इनटू द एक्टिव कंसल्टेशन एंगेजमेंट प्रोसेसेस। फॉर एग्जांपल बैंगलोर में चर्च स्ट्रीट को पेडेस्ट्रनाइज करा गया, मतलब उनको वॉकिंग पाथ बनाया गया। तो इसमें डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ अर्बन लैंड ट्रांसपोर्ट वाज हेवीली इन्वॉल्व्ड विद the local residents, the businesses, and the startups in the area to pedestrianize. So उनके ही फीडबैक लेके सेफ्टी प्रोटोकॉल्स देके ये प्रोसेस फिर लाया गया। एंड स्वच्छ भारत मिशन के अंदर भी स्वच्छ सर्वेक्षण टूल किट के अंदर देर इज अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट क्राइटेरिया टू टेक पार्टिसिपेंट इनपुट्स and gather citizen feedback to actually implement the mission interventions. So as of 2022 data, we had received um, responses from 1.14 crore citizens from 4,355 cities. So a lot of data can be collected and citizen perception can be collected through such formal engagement processes. एंड आई थिंक बहुत लोगों ने ये सोशल मीडिया में भी देखा होगा कि नवी मुंबई में सोशल मीडिया कैंपेन्स के थ्रू भी अवेयरनेस क्रिएशन काफी यूजफुल हो रहा है। हम आजकल एक्चुअली देख रहे हैं इवन ट्विटर कैंपेन्स, लिंक्डइन के थ्रू काफी सारे डिजिटल एंगेजमेंट कैंपेन्स हो रहे हैं जिसमें अवेयरनेस, नॉट जस्ट अवेयरनेस बट एक्चुअली वोटिंग भी हो रही है जिसमें इंटरवेंशन फिर यूज किया जा रहा है। मैंने जो यंग गेम चेंजर्स इनिशिएटिव का एग्जांपल दिया, वहां पे जटनी म्युनिसिपैलिटी में एक्चुअली दो स्पेसेस जो उनको सिलेक्ट करने थे फॉर पब्लिक डिजाइनिंग, फॉर पब्लिक स्पेस डिजाइनिंग, उन्होंने कम्युनिटी वोटिंग प्रोसेस यूज किया जिसमें उन्होंने एक ऑनलाइन सर्वे डेवलप करके एक्चुअली वो वोटिंग के थ्रू दो sites पे shortlist किया. So right now we have those two sites which have been shortlisted, which were selected by the community members and the ward residents themselves to make the improvements in the municipality. So we can leverage digital campaigns, we can leverage different online modes of engagement and platforms to also spread the word and get active public participation. And another way is to also involve your local organizations, your local experts and civil society organizations in the different challenges and also to create the awareness with the local insights. So, Streets for People Challenge was an example in which a lot of the local institutes and experts and design policy institutes were involved in developing the solutions which then the participants and the community sort of voted on and worked together to develop the solutions that they can see implemented in their cities. Rahagiri Day भी एक example है जहाँ पे multiple NGOs and not-for-profit organizations are involved to do capacity building of participants or anyone who is basically in the as part of the day on different issues including health, environment, and any other social or sort of visual art issues. So local spaces are the place where we can see a lot of these interventions. Local places are the site of delivery. So we need to work with our local governments to actually push for the interventions that we would like to see. So what can we as cities and communities do? We make sure जो सारे वार्ड्स में वार्ड कमिटीज का जो हम मैंडेट है उसको हम कैसे इंस्टीट्यूशनलाइज करें और कम्युनिटी पार्टिसिपेशन लॉज भी फोर्स में लाए ताकि फ्रीक्वेंट इंटरेक्शंस हो सके, पब्लिक पार्टिसिपेशन एक फॉर्मल वे में हम उसको देख सकें, स्पेशली इन मल्टीपल स्मॉलर सिटीज जहाँ पे सिविक इंटीमेसी मतलब सिटीजन टू रिप्रेजेंटेटिव रेशियो एक्चुअली एक आइडियल प्रोपोर्शन में है और वहाँ पे हम सोशल स्ट्रॉन्ग सोशल इंटरेक्शंस भी encourage कर सकते हैं. We should also have advisory committees and councils where we have representation from the target group that we would like to see, where especially the marginalized and the vulnerable communities should also be part of representation, which will also encourage their leadership skills and promote civic engagement. फॉर एग्जाम्पल इन नेपाल धुलिकल एक म्यूनिसिपैलिटी है जिन्होंने एक डिसेबिलिटी काउंसिल इंस्टीट्यूट किया है जहाँ पे हर वार्ड में से एक पर्सन विद डिसेबिलिटी इस काउंसिल को रिप्रेजेंट करता है एंड हाईलाइट करता है कि उनके नीड्स क्या हैं. हमारा सेकेंड स्टेप है वी शुड बी मॉनिटरिंग एंड रिपोर्टिंग ऑन द काइंड ऑफ इंफॉर्मेशन on the sort on the basically the level of implementation of the SDGs. So for this, we really need to maintain data which is dynamic and disaggregated. Disaggregated मतलब जो हमारे indicators के अंदर हम data देखते हैं उसको हम collect जो करते हैं उसको हर population group का एक representation रहना चाहिए. So gender disaggregated, disability disaggregated, यूथ डिसएग्रीगेटेड ताकि हम हर पॉपुलेशन ग्रुप का स्पेसिफिक डेटा कलेक्ट कर सके और उस हिसाब से पॉलिसीज डेवलप कर सके. एंड रिपोर्टिंग है where city governments can actually also conduct some reviews of their progress of SDGs implementation. Say periodic reviews in which to understand how much have they achieved in the implementation of the SDGs and how much is yet to be completed. And then finally, we should basically also be engaged in active place-making interventions. Place-making is basically a collaborative and creative process in which we see different communities come together to visualize the interventions that they would like to see. So collectively reimagine and reinvent their surroundings, their physical, cultural, and social aspects of their surroundings. And it gives us an impactful way of connecting with the community through the interventions that we have suggested and also that we see in front of us. So it brings us, so the placemaking can ensure that we also highlight the distinct cultural identity of the place, and we are the ones who would then encourage that to the local, to bring about in implementation to the local municipality. Um, so finally, just this is the last slide. So what can youth do, and what can we do, like amongst us as young participants, to sort of have an engagement in implementation of SDGs. So one is contribute towards research. पारुल ने जो survey पहले highlight किया था कि data monitoring हम कैसे कर सकते हैं, तो please जाइए उस survey को fill कीजिए, हम links भी भेज देंगे. Be part of SDG trainings to understand SDG के targets और indicators होते क्या हैं, उसको हम कैसे implement कर सकते हैं, उसका हम कैसे local municipality के साथ align कर सकते हैं हमारे cities में. फिर we should be part of different workshops and forums, the youth forums in which we can actually bring our independent ideas. And finally, we should also do an evaluation of the kind of implementation that we've seen in the SDGs implementation. So there is also a way of calculating the SDGs, and we have a youth scorecard. So we'll share the links कि आप खुद से भी कैसे आप बेसिकली विजुलाइज कर सकते हैं कि क्या डेटा अवेलेबल है, एंड उस हिसाब से आप भी कंट्रीब्यूट कर सकते हैं अपनी सिटीज के डेटा के ऊपर. So yeah, that is all as part of the presentation. And Parul, if anything else that I have missed out, or if you'd like to add.
I think this is good. Let's open up to the interaction now.
Yes, thank you so much, both Adishri and Parul. So, just to summarize to all the participants, what we have learned so far is various ways of citizen participation. It's the emphasis on traditional knowledge, which Parul spoke about in the beginning, to address problems at the local level, and also increasing citizen participation is like a great idea, and something very important for us to know as citizens, as well as for your competitions which are upcoming. Apart from that, all the examples that were given, they are good data points for all of you. So I'll open now for questions. If anybody wants to speak and ask a question, you can raise your hand and I can unmute you. So maybe till the time that they are thinking, I can ask one question, Parul. So for as a city government representative, can the mayor or the commissioner directly reach out to UN organizations to collaborate and work on certain aspect of service delivery? It can be related to water or anything else like housing, etc. So is that a possible way to go about it?
No, absolutely, and thanks for that wonderful question, Pratiksha. So, in fact, we encourage that level of direct partnership a lot. There are global forums like the Global Covenant of Mayors, which is curated by UN Habitat and UCLG collectively, and it's a forum where mayors, not just from India but all across the world, can join, and it hosts several meetings, all throughout the year, both online and in person, to encourage cross learning, sharing the experiences. I guess also exchanging notes on the frustrations of city governance. But that's a very, very good platform. For that cross, city to city networking. There are several forums, similar forums that are, more thematically, prioritized. There is the climate forum for mayors and cities that are dealing with the climate crisis more urgently compared to the others. And when it comes to the technical assistance itself, all the UN agencies, including ours, NGO office, they can reach out to me, to anyone from our offices anytime. And then we can see what type of technical assistance or capacity building or knowledge advocacy is needed to that city. And we do work very closely with cities to find solutions and creative solutions to their challenges.
Thank you. Thank you so much for answering that. I think participants could sort of understand because they would be playing the role of a mayor in these competitions. So, they could design their policies and speeches accordingly. And there was one question on the chat box with respect to examples, if you could give. And I think you've touched upon it, but there was one specific question for global examples. So, is there any city who's done really well in specifically in SDG 11 globally, which they could.
We are compiling the global, performance, how different cities are doing, that report. Perhaps at the World Urban Forum, it's a event that is organized once in 2 years. And we bring on board cities and national governments to specifically talk about urbanization in their countries, and that's where a lot of these knowledge products are shared. But when it comes to SDG localization, countries, cities like Paris, cities like London, I think LA, Los Angeles, they're doing quite well in Norway, Trondheim. So these are some cities I would suggest everyone, please go and see because they are mapping their indicators. And not only that, a lot of them have adopted very creative approaches. There are some cities that just put the that actually go out to people. हमने participatory budgeting के बारे में बात किया था की थी. So they actually put out their budget and they just do a poll of their city residents कि आपको कौन से SDG में projects चाहिए. So somebody clicks that, okay, I think water is more important to me, so they'll click SDG 6. Someone will say, I think for me it is poverty, they will click SDG 1. So, so they collect ideas from people, okay, what sector theme of SDG is important for you? And then they see how well they're allocating the city's budget or the region's budget that is aligning with the people's priorities. So there are a lot of different ways to look at how to engage people and how to make interesting methods of, participation processes more formal. There is also the voluntary local review reports. So if you do a Google search for that, that will also give you many ideas to learn about participation at the local levels. And if you do your research well, that's already getting ready to win many prizes at this Prajatantra competition. So do your
Yes,
research.
yes. Thank you so much for answering that. So if we don't have any further questions, we can close this session. And thank you so much, Parul and Adishri, both for sharing your valuable insights. I think these are important for us all as citizens as well as part of Prajatantra. So thank you so much, guys. And participants, I'll just request you to if you could start your videos, we'll just take a quick picture and then we can close this session. Some of them are still turning it on. Yes.
Prashik, you are taking the photo or Pratiksha is taking?
I've taken.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much again, Parul and Adushi and all the other participants. All the very best.
Thank you. Thank you so much for today.